of the why did you, and I heard over my shoulder, I heard the husband go, and I looked sideways. Sorry, my microphone is, sounds like my microphone may be going out. Hold on just a second, because I don't want that to get distracting. Okay, let's see if that'll work. So anyway, so I heard him give this kind of grunt, and I looked sideways quickly enough that I saw him and his wife lock eyes, you know, and she was going, and he was like, you know, and I'm like, okay, clearly there's an example here. Would you like to share with the class? and they kind of looked at us, they're like, oh, well, okay, something happened last night. We were at, you know, didn't like each other very much last night because there was something going on. And I said, so what was the example? What happened? And he said, well, and they told this story. So it turns out that she had gone out with some girlfriends for dinner, and they have these 3 little kids. She had come home after her dinner out, looked in the fridge and said, hey, honey, you know, why did you give the kids juice instead of milk at dinner? And he said, and I got upset, she got defensive, and it just escalated, and I had just finished telling the group that one of the ways to address this, instead of why did you, because if you have to ask why, you have to ask why, right? So I've asked a lot of men, what do you say instead? And this one man looked at me like the answer was so obvious, like I had 2 heads or something, and he said, how different would it be if you just said, I know you must have had a reason, can you help me understand what it is? Okay, and I went, okay, you know, good idea. It's not saying you idiot, you know, you're a bonehead. It's I'm not there yet, help me understand. So here we are in the home group, and they just explained this, you know, wife had said, why did you give the kids juice instead of milk at dinner? So I said, okay. So turned to the husband, and I said, okay, James, so help me understand. So what was the thinking? What was the reasons? And he said, well, I looked in the fridge and I saw we only had this much milk in the carton, and if I gave them milk for dinner, they wouldn't have enough milk for cereal in the morning. So I was going to go out and get more milk at the grocery store, but the baby was already asleep, and I would have had to wake the baby up just to go to the grocery store. And I didn't want to do that because it messes with his sleep schedule. We've just gotten the baby down onto a schedule. So I thought, you know what? I'll give the kids juice, but I'll dilute it by half with water. So the young one is really the one that has the problem with the sugar in the juice. And so if she gets up in the middle of the night, I'll just go in and I'll rub her back and she'll go right back to sleep. So that's what I was thinking. And the wife went, you know, and her jaw literally dropped. You know how that's sort of a stereotype, but her jaw literally dropped. And she was like, oh my gosh, I was thinking you dodo. You know, I was thinking you're a bonehead. You know, and I realized how often we do that. And so it's not necessarily that they're hearing disrespect where we don't intend it. Sometimes they're hearing disrespect that we don't realize is disrespect, but it is. And there's just a radar for that. And so here's my suggestion for you guys. The what do you do about this for this one? The next time you think to yourself or you want to say out loud, what was he thinking? Stop and think to yourself, Shanti promised me he had a reason for this. And then say, you know, help me understand. And you know what? I will almost guarantee you, now this is not going to be 100% of the time, but it's going to be close. I will almost guarantee you that you will hear this well thought out string that's just amazing. Okay, we're getting to the point where I'm going to need a different microphone, I think. Sorry. Okay, pause. Sorry. Should I just use the, all right. Okay. Check. Is this on? Not yet. Hold on. Thank you, Oliver. I had to make Oliver an honorary girl, too. Testing. Is that good? All right. So, see, I'm like, I must be Italian or something because I talk with my hands. So this is like, all right. Okay, so truly, that would be my first suggestion, is in the what do you do about it, is truly, next time you find yourself in that what was he thinking mode, really stop and say, no, you know what, he probably does, I'm not there yet, but help me understand. And you know what, if you do that, you will approach it automatically from a respectful assumption rather than a disrespectful one. Okay, Now, there are many different ways this plays out, many different ways that men can hear a message that we don't intend. Now, here's an example, though, of a positive way of approaching this, because it's not just about avoiding that signal of disrespect that we didn't intend, but a lot of women are like, what do I say instead? What's the positive thing? What if I want to show my husband how much I appreciate him? What do I say? Or if I want to tell my son something that's really going to build him up, what do I say? So I have realized that over the years, I really think, I'm not 100% ready to say this publicly yet, but I'll tell you, I am really close to declaring that there is an equivalent of I love you. Because for men, I love you is nice, but it's not it. It's not the thing that really hits them like it hits us. And I learned really quickly that it doesn't do to sort of follow you around the husband around the house and coo, oh, honey, I respect you so much. After a while, my poor husband was like, you know what, can we time out? I know what you're trying to do, and I appreciate it. But it just doesn't have the same ring to it. And so I've been trying to find out from guys, what is it that hits them? What is it that has the same ring to it? And one of the things that is powerful is, honey, I'm so proud of you. Oh, that hits a man in every way he needs to be hit. However, it's not as everyday, okay? So what do you say in an everyday way that is the equivalent of I love you? And that's where we have two words. You ready for this? This is emotionally powerful for a man. Thank you. Believe it or not, noticing what he does on the outside and thanking him for it has this enormous emotional impact, believe it or not. I don't get it because I'm not a guy, but so far everything I've seen has been thank you for playing with the kids, even though you were so tired from work and I know you just wanted to crash on the couch. Thank you for taking him outside. Thank you for mowing the lawn, even though it was so hot outside. Thank you for working so hard to help support this family. Thank you for the other day when you were so grumpy because you'd had a bad day at work. Thank you. I could see you were trying to pull yourself out of being grumpy just so that we wouldn't be affected. Wow, thank you. Those kinds of things, we think of them as just little comments. But to guys, that's oxygen. It's huge. And here's the problem. I realized that I think some of those things, but I don't think to say them. Like, there was one day I was driving into the garage, and Jeff was out mowing the lawn, and this is in hot Atlanta. It was really hot outside. And I realized I would have driven into the garage, and I would have thought to myself, oh, that's nice of him. I never would have thought to say it. Or, if I would have said it, here's how it would have come out. I can't believe I'm going to admit this out loud. Here's how it would come out. Oh, thanks for mowing the lawn, but you missed a spot. And we think, what? But he's hearing what you did on the outside wasn't good enough. Okay, now I can tell from some of your faces that you're having the same thought that I did the first 20 times I heard this, and I'm going to put this into words, even though we'd never say this out loud. But what you're thinking inside, some of you, is, oh, please, grow up, get over it. That shouldn't bother him. And I realized, you know what? We're saying that because it wouldn't bother us. It wouldn't bother me. He's not me. He's wired very differently by a God who knew what he was doing. And so putting ourselves in that shoes of recognizing, you know what? He will notice the spot that he missed already, I promise. Because guys are very attuned to whether what they're doing on the outside is any good. Instead, somebody said this to their husband the other day, I can tell, just from that reaction, okay? So this seriously, if you will find the things that you can say thank you about, you may see him light up in ways that you haven't seen in years. Now, I always tell people, if you're having a hard time believing what I'm saying, seriously, don't believe me, try it. It's amazing. Try it. And you're going to get this really interesting reaction. I had one young woman I was talking to, and she said, Shanti, I'm not sure I believe what you're saying. She's probably 23 years old, part-time college student. And I said the same thing to her. If you don't believe me, just give it a shot and let me know what happens. So that night, she was part-time college student, part-time waitress. She went off to her waitressing job. And there had been this guy at the waitressing job named Kyle that she'd kind of had her eyes on for a while and thought he was kind of cute, and they hadn't had that much chance to interact. But that night, she noticed something that happened. And apparently, Kyle and the manager of the restaurant had been getting into it over the last couple of weeks and had been having this big conflict, and it had been really making it miserable for everybody else that worked there. And that night, she watched across the room as the manager came over to Kyle and started trying to get into it with him again. And Kyle just refused. He said, you know what? This is making it miserable for everybody. I'm not going to do this with you, man. Let's take it offline. We can talk about it later. This is not the place to talk about it. And he walked away. So this young woman I'd been talking to went up to Kyle a couple of minutes later, and she said, I noticed what you did. I noticed what happened. He was trying to provoke you, and you wouldn't let him. You were protecting us. Thank you. You were a man of honor. Thank you. And she walked away. She said later, Shanti, he followed me around all night. Because here was a woman who noticed what he did and said it was good. And that do I measure up question, here's somebody who thinks I measure up. It is powerful, not just for a husband or a boyfriend, but for our sons. As they're forming this identity, it is so important, so important. We can get to that during questions and answers, which we need to stop and actually get to questions. But let me mention one thing at the very end, the very last surprise, real quickly. Because the very last surprise that we got on the survey was it stunned me. It made me almost cry. Because I gave the men a blank space. And I said, we've had all these multiple choice questions. What's the one most important thing you wish your wife or a girlfriend, that you wish that she knew, but you feel you can't explain to her or tell her? And I thought it would be a chance for the men to vent or say all these different things. And instead, when I got the surveys back, the survey spreadsheets back with these hundreds of responses, I almost started crying. Because the top response by far, when they could say anything, the one most important thing I wish my wife knew is how much I love her. And I realized our guys really do have this goodwill towards us. They do care about us so much, just like we care about them. It's just sometimes we're missing each other. And it's really a great opportunity to have that goodwill back and learn some of this stuff. Because have you been getting a sense, as I've been talking, just how much power God has put in our hands as women? Have you been getting that? To either build them up or to tear them down? Final quote before we do questions here. I speak all the time, and one of my favorite formats is actually where a male pastor will bring me in on a Sunday morning and interview me on stage as the sermon time at church. And because both men and women hear this stuff at the same time, and it's really, really helpful. So this one pastor was doing this, and he is this man that I have so much respect for. He pastors this giant church, and he's on TV a lot. He's written all these books, and his congregation just really appreciates him. And he said something at the end of our time together that just took my breath away. We had been talking about this how much I love her thing. And at the end, he stood up on stage in front of this massive auditorium that fits several thousand people at once. And he said, I know you think you've got a good pastor. I know you think that. You don't. You've got a great pastor's wife. That's how men feel about us. So let's just take that as truly recognizing, sorry, Spider-Man reference, with great power comes great responsibility. And let's use that. Let's really take that responsibility seriously and use that well. So I know we have a few minutes for questions.